Hi, friends. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. So the title of this video is Be Mindful of the Parasitic Influences, especially the ones that we are leaving space for or that we are inviting into our situation. And this is not to say that there's any victim blaming here, but we have to be very mindful of what we're consuming, what we are allowing into our energetic space, and knowing that those energetic templates do manifest physically. And sometimes we have no control over those influences and how they get into our sphere. But what we do have control over is how we respond to them and the preventative measures that we can take to minimize or mitigate the impact. So there's a couple different things I'm going to share that are all seemingly separate points, but they're really going to weave together into a full picture here and hopefully establish the importance of really taking into consideration the need for that caution and protection. And there's certainly a number of astrological elements that are related to that. The eclipse aspect is huge in this, and I do feel like that the full moon lunar eclipse, that time period, and just being in the eclipse pocket in general, is whatever the parasitic influences are, they are making their move, right? And like I said, sometimes we can have control over things, other times we can't, but we can control how we respond, and we can always have control over ourselves in terms of how we practice and maintain some measure of defensive protection and caution, right? So, and there are other people talking about this. Everything I'm going to share with you is going to be linked in the description box below. Anything that I reference that is a resource or a reference is going to be linked below, and they will be appropriately named. I'm not going to take credit for anything that's not mine. So of course, and that's the beauty of research, right? We're all building off of each other and having our ideas either verified or challenged, right? That's science, right? So what I have in front of us, first of all, is just a picture of my local waterway through my property. So I originally wanted to go walk my local ley line, and this is in reference to a couple videos that I've recently posted, not on the tube, but they are linked in the description box on the tube if you're interested in watching them. I wanted to go out and walk my local ley line, which is a rails to trails pedestrian bike path that goes along a major creek that empties into a very major river in Pennsylvania. But there was a circumstance that happened in the last couple of days that actually has made it's easier and probably safer for me to be a little closer to home today in this moment. So I just kind of walked the length of my property, which this creek, Log Run, goes parallel through my property. So I was going to take you on a tour actually and take a little video, but there were so many people driving along Log Run Road, which is, right in front of and parallel to my house, that I was just like, this is annoying. So I just took a picture. This is from the footbridge from my front yard over into my driveway area, and then you would walk down and follow Log Run Road. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is one of the practical things that we can do, which is establish a relationship with your local energy grid line system, right? The lattice structure that is local to you is important that you establish a relation. It's kind of like eating macrobiotic, right? You eat what's local and what's in season, and your body naturally is going to adjust to that. And it's so much more in resonance, right, with each other. And so walking those local ley lines, a lot of places do have recreational pathways that follow along waterways, and doing this with some conscious intention can go a long way. And so I at least walked the very local aspect of it because it's right on my property, but I wanted to show you, I just wanted to give you some visual eye candy, basically. And it's not even candy because it's not bad for you. It's just an idea of what I get to enjoy pretty much every day, which is a huge, huge blessing. And the fact that to start off with is something practical that we can do to bolster our own energy field, which is to establish this relationship, right? People talk about grounding. So you take that idea and you widened that into a kinetic. It's one thing to put your bare feet on the ground and establish that relationship, right? That's great. That's perfect. So take that another step further, or multiple steps, and charge those energy ley lines that are local to you with you, right? Walking is such a amazing type of exercise, right? It's so underappreciated, and how beneficial it really is. And then you go, it's like you think it's just like walking out in nature and everybody talks about it, but also you can think about it as charging you and your field and bolstering it, and also doing the same for these local ley lines. So it starts here. And the reason I couldn't do the full walk, which I intended, is because of what turned out to be a quite physical parasitic influence. And what I have learned doing this work that I've been doing body work and energy work for 20 years almost, right? And doing intuitive work professionally for about 5 years, and as an astrologer and intuitive reader. So what I've learned in doing this work is that if there's something that becomes physically manifest, either in your body, in your relationships, or in the world around you, chances are it has been energetically set as a template for much, much longer. And I've been kind of observing some things over the last couple of days, and certainly since the eclipse, the lunar eclipse. We're in that pocket now. I've been observing and just seeing how it unfolds. And now that this particular parasitic influence has become very physical in my life, I'm like, oh, it's time that I need to share and talk about it, because it's become physically manifest right here in my own body. And oftentimes that's how, people who have a shamanic way of doing their work, not everybody does, but the people who have serious, very strongly aspected in their astrology charts, tend to have these qualities. You have a relationship with the animals and, with the energy grid system, but oftentimes you'll get messages from spirit through your relationship to the animals, either a sighting of them, they come into your life. It happens all the time. It happens all the time between me and other people in my life, in the work that I do. And this is no different, right? So on Friday, I go outside. It's really windy, it's clear and it's windy. And so it's like windy all up in like the high, I'm surrounded by trees on my property, as you can see from this picture. I mean, they're just everywhere. And so, of course, tick season is here now. And so in that time period, obviously a tick had dropped out of the trees and landed right down the front of my shirt. Well, I didn't know that until about an hour later. I'm working at my desk, and all of a sudden my skin, just from like right across my thymus, like right around the clavicle down to the heart chakra, starts just burning and itching. And I'm like, what is that? And so that prompted me to look. I saw that there's this tiny, tiny little tick that was attached. It wasn't engorged or anything. Like it had barely gotten there. So I was able to remove it. And then I started treating the tick bites, which are incredibly painful and itchy. And then I made arrangements to get a high dose of dioxycycline, which is an antibiotic that keeps bacteria from growing in your body. They use it also as a preventative for things like malaria, but it's also meant to be a prophylactic for Lyme's disease, right? And I'm no stranger to tick bites. They happen quite often if you're an outside person and you live around a lot of trees, which I do. So I have my own natural, first aid kit for these types of things. But he got me several places, and he latched, and then he kept dropping until I found him. So thankfully I was able to remove him very quickly before he started even like feeding, basically. But I also know how, to me, I made the decision to do the dioxycycline for the sake of preventative, right? And I know what it does. It basically poisons the well. It does not allow for new growth of bacteria, which is all bacteria, right? So it prohibits the growth of that particular bacteria that could cause Lyme's disease, but it also is going to wreak havoc on my microbiome. So I'm already fixing, right, to do all the things that in the next day or so are going to start building that, giving food to the healthy microbiome and establishing it. it. And there's lots of ways to do that. So again, we go back to these practical applications, right? You can make your own probiotic drinks and find recipes online. You can use certain natural, remedies to take care of the symptoms. And I'm just grateful that my body responded so quickly. And that is another point that is essential to make here about trusting your gut. You have to know your intuition is on point so you can trust it, right? And that takes work, that takes practice, that takes a lot of screwing up, right? And being wrong about things and retracing your steps. And I'll tell you what, this Mercury retrograde that starts tomorrow on the 1st of April is going to be a big lesson in all of this, right? So I would really just, whatever it is that you have, whatever it is that you find that you're just like, ooh, I need to go back over that. I said that, and then I'm like, damn, like that's not, I need to really establish that what I say and what I do and how I put myself out there in the world actually has an impact on the world. And this can be positive, incredibly positive. This is why in this, those of us who are on Subscribestar, membership, we've been doing this grid work for weeks now. So the thing is, when you have a strong field like that, you will attract those who want to feed rather than those who establish their own strong connection. And a tick is a tick is a tick, right? But when they show up like that, especially people who do tend to be more shamanic in the way that they do their work, like I do and other people I know do, that was just like, okay, it's manifested very physically. So I want to even just beyond caution, just to assert and to maybe even validate for people who have been already feeling this. Now I'm going to show you a couple other pieces of data. One is intuitive and others are very much empirical that started to, two pieces that are intuitive, because one is a dream sequence. And so that's obviously very personal to me and is intuitive, right? It's not empirical other than my sharing of it. I can't prove any of it though. The other is a particular card that I pulled in a reading for myself a couple days ago. And then we're going to look at some other actual data points of the solar weather and the Schumann resonance, right? So I feel one thing I do want to share is there are things that I brought up in this eclipse video. So people who are supporting Catalyst Energies on Subscribestar have access, full free range access to all of these videos that I put out for digital download. So they you guys have already been watching it or at least have access to it, and you can also access a digital download for a very small fee through my store, my website, if you're interested. We look at the eclipse season that's current, but also how it the previous one from September, October, and if you remember, in early October something really big happened in the middle of the eclipse window. We go over that, how that's influencing what's going on now, and then we look out again into September, October 2024, when this eclipse cycle comes to a close and a new one comes around. So we're looking at some very large scale patterns here with this eclipse forecast. So one of the things I did talk about in that forecast though, at the very end, is I shared a really profound dream that I had that was very personal, but also the imagery was very much related to the themes not only that I think are surrounding this eclipse big time, but have just gotten that much more relevant to what I'm personally experiencing, what's happening in my personal orbit with other people in particular. And it just reinforces how important it is to be taking the steps or taking it seriously, right? You want to think about it as putting on the full armor of God, you go for it, right? If you want to think about it as, bolstering your energy field, that works too, right? Whatever it is, establishing that relationship with that which is infinite within us is huge right now. And like I said, I feel like the parasitic influences, whether it's what you're consuming online and in terms of media, and again, Mercury, I think is going to have, and its retrograde is really going to have a big impact on this, but being very mindful about what you're consuming physically, what you're consuming in terms of information, what you're consuming in terms of what you're entertaining, in terms of your own thought processes, what type of entertainment you are engaged with. All of this really matters. And there are things we can't control, right? I can't control the tick coming out unless I never leave my house again. And I'm not willing to do that. But I do know the steps, and I employed the steps in order to minimize the impact, to keep myself safe. And there is a purification at a material level that is happening right now, and that has a lot to do actually with Venus and Pisces, and the position she's currently in terms of the zodiac, what degree she's in. So let's go back to log run. So just to have something else to look at. But anyway, you can access that eclipse forecast through the link in the description box in order to download it. Or if you're interested in membership, you can get information about that too. And that would be something that you would have full access to, as well as the other benefits of Subscribe Star patronage. So what's on my list here? So I got this card a couple days ago. Actually, let's go back. I'm going to bring the card up first. Let's see here. This card came up in a reading for myself just a couple days ago, Dark Matter Magician. And the deck is listed in the description box below. This is called the Raven's Eye Oracle. I got this directly from the artist who made these images, and then she made this deck. And so there was a lot of other elements, but this really stuck out to me. And one of the things that also stuck out in terms of dark matter is that many of us have probably already, and if you haven't, I'll have something linked in the description box about NASA shooting the rockets into the eclipse. They're not really shooting them into the eclipse. They're actually shooting the rockets into the ionosphere because they want to measure the electromagnetic and electrical influence of eclipses on the ionosphere, which I think is even more interesting and actually relevant. They are looking for actual empirical evidence about changes in the electromagnetism based on astronomical events, right? Isn't that what astrology is really reading? So I think that that's very interesting. But I've seen other things. I've seen other articles and headlines all over the place about how CERN is firing up in order to find evidence of dark matter, also on the solar eclipse. So these two things are happening on the solar eclipse. So when this card came out, that really stuck to me, this dark matter magician, right? And it does. Look at that. It talks about parasites. Now, this is before the tick incident, right? This is when I started to get it in the spiritual realm, in the energetic realm. I started feeling, oh man, the parasites are about to make their move, right? They're about to latch on because they can't themselves get what they need without latching on, right? And you can apply this to whoever you want, right? The powers that be, I suppose. So, but when this card came out, it was reversed, right? And oftentimes if you're reading like oracle cards or tarot cards, the reversal is an inversion, or it's the energy of the card is blocked in some way, which makes it even more problematic, or maybe the energy is on its way out. But I thought it was interesting. It says manifest, so when it's reversed, it says manifesting your own demon, projecting negativity, and possessed, right? And the manifesting your own demon was one of the things that really struck me, actually, because I was, because everything else surrounding this particular reading was talking about how there's initiation and there's rebirth and there's a lot of defense and aid, right? And ultimately there's a confidence that comes forward after with what's where we're all at right now. But that doesn't mean that there aren't influences that are going to attempt to come in and hijack that or have this parasitic influence, right? But it's something that manifesting your own demon, and this is not a victim blaming type of explanation at all, far from it, but we have to take responsibility for ourselves. And sometimes we can be so caught up in the fear mongering that is truly just surrounding everything right now that we do, in fact, project negativity and then manifest our own demon or parasite. And with all of the events surrounding the eclipse season and what's happened with the full moon lunar eclipse and the collapse of a certain structure and all the other things that are tied around this time period that have to do with all of these dark types of things, and then to have CERN, right, be like, oh, we're looking for dark matter. It's like, okay, they're making, they're making their move, and the more that we can be mindful about what we're consuming, what we're letting into our awareness, or making sure that we have triage, right? Because that's what my treatment for, what I experienced with the tick was triage, right? I have all the tools to like help this whole area heal because it's painful, and instead of like completely numbing myself out, I want to be able to feel the progression, right? But there's also the high dose of antibiotics that is going to basically purge everything out of my system, and I will have to start over in terms of reestablishing a healthy microbiome in the meantime. And maybe there's something that was embedded even deeper that is getting purged out, or is going to it won't be able to grow any further, that I would have never done had I not had the tick. So who knows? Those are just the places my mind goes with events like this. So I'm not the only person talking about this. There's no way I could be, but it's coming through very strongly. And I do have linked in the description box a video from a woman. She's a psychic medium. I found her channel through my own personal journey and a personal event in my life, my own research, and looking into things. As you can imagine, being that she's a medium, right? She talks to dead people for a living. So that's what I was looking towards, getting more research about a certain type of passing that this person often will work with in terms of her clientele. But she put out like kind of an energy update because it came out of a personal client reading that then she felt really called to share in general. And it was the same things that I've been picking up on in terms of like, what are we consuming? What are we letting into our space? And I think a lot of us have been letting more into our space than we realize, because we are being kind of to either being distracted so that we don't notice the parasitic influence, or we don't even realize that that's what's happening, or we're so numb to how it feels in our body that we have no idea that this is happening. And the other aspect of that is that because we leave the space or we're inviting it in, we're really just kind of manifesting ourselves. Now, certain groups of people I feel like are getting hit a lot harder, and that comes out through several different readings. The Draco energy is getting hit big time, big time as well. So there's a couple pieces that I want to look at, and we'll wrap up here in terms of the space weather, the Schumann resonance, and then a particular dream I had earlier in the week that has a lot to do with the influence of just trying to get that negativity, like, seated in our consciousness or our subconscious, so that we begin to project it and then manifest it, and then then it becomes physical, and we're like, oh, where did that come from? And then we feel attacked, and it's like, well, the seeds were getting planted. Now, around the time that there was a very large amplification in the Schumann, which was on the 29th into the 30th, it looks like, I started getting this sense of being influenced negatively, you know what I mean? Like in my subconscious, trying to trigger me into fear and mistrust and, just circumstances that would bring out those types of feelings and experiences. And so around that same time, there was this really large amplification in the Schumann. And I'm not the only one. There are other people that have this hypothesis as well, that the Schumann resonance, which is the extremely low frequency that comes from the planet, I really encourage you to look up extremely low frequency, familiarize yourself with ELF so you know what the Schumann resonance actually is, or at least what is a huge component of it. So you understand what I'm about to say in terms of, I think that this frequency has been hijacked in some way, or is being artificially induced in some instances in order to, well, there's probably lots of reasons why. I mean, think of harp, for instance, as a way to explain this. But I noticed that around the time that this was happening, there was a really big amplification in the Schumann, right? The wave length got higher, right? The peaks and valleys got bigger, right? So it amplified. The other thing that I noticed around this time too is, if you look, we had at the right before the lunar eclipse, there was the largest solar storm we've had in a while. And granted that the sun is still flaring with these high M class flares into X class flares, but for the most part, since the eclipse, the solar weather, like the geomagnetic unrest, has gone down pretty considerably, right? So there's no indication that space weather is responsible for the amplification of the Schumann, which, you know, happens sometimes. If you really track it, you can kind of see sometimes when we're like, oh, okay, there's space weather, oh, the Schumann goes up, right? And then you have these, just kind of, because the Schumann amplifying is a response to something, right? It's a response to the ELF being amplified. So there's no indication that the space weather currently is responsible. So whether or not you think that the Schumann doing that means that we are having ascension symptoms, or if you think it's because it's artificially induced, you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. But what I will tell you, it's about this time that I started having those dreams that were very negative, that, based in fear, based in mistrust, those types of things. And then I started getting the reading, and the warning, right, about how we can find ourselves manifesting our own and uh, projecting that negativity, but that little seed can easily be planted, and I think a lot of it has to do, ultimately, what I'm talking about here, and like I said, the person whose video I'm linking to, she talked about the same thing out of her client's one-on-one client reading, that she felt like it was important to share the message, which is very similar, right? Be mindful of what you're consuming in terms of digital media and social media. When we let these things into our field, that's when they start to have an influence, and it's the same thing with here, right? The parasites are definitely making their move, and there's some things we don't have any control over, but we have control over how we respond, how we enact preventative measures, how we establish a healthy relationship to our natural healing abilities and our immunity. And they're really only able to come in and exert their influence if we let them, right? If we don't have any means to protect ourselves or shield ourselves. And that is a very physical and energetic process. And that's something that you're not finding a lot of information about, right? I mean, it's very little in terms of how do you actually do this with minerals and with herbs, and using certain energy modalities like qigong and tai chi and reiki and body work and acupuncture, right? All of these things have an impact, and we don't necessarily need all of the tech that is like a med bed and scalar wave technology and all this, when it's right here. And if we just established a relationship more with what is naturally here, it's more powerful than any tech we could actually, but we have to do it together, right? And that's the point of our grid work in our group. So I wanted to share all of this with you. I know that it kind of seems to be bouncing around, but I think for a lot of people, it's going to be very confirming and validating of what they've been picking up on their own, and how important it is that we are really taking advantage of this Mercury retrograde to establish how our actions not only impact ourselves, but impact those around us and the actual energetic templates that make up the collective. And if we are letting parasites into our field, then for sure it's reverberating out through the rest. And I think that a lot of people are, right? Which is why some people are having it physically manifest around us. And so we guess, do our best and stay consistent and take it seriously. Like I said, it could be the full armor of God, or you can talk about the ways that you take care of your physical body and your energy field, because it's all the same thing when it comes down to it. But by the time it's manifesting physically, it's already energetically being put into place. So, and we still have another week until the solar eclipse, so of there's still lots of potential as we're in this pocket, right? It can all shift around into whatever configuration it's going to land by the time we get to the eclipse. And so all we can do is do our best, right, guys? So if you're interested in the eclipse forecast, and you're not already a member through Subscribestar, you can follow the link in the description box and it'll take you to my store, and you can purchase it for digital download. Like I said, it's a 90-minute recording video all about this eclipse season and how it ties into the others that are bookending it. And follow Catalyst Energies on Telegram and on Facebook, and certainly a number of other video platforms other than the one that you're watching this on. And if you're interested in anything else I have to offer, you can just go to my website. It's the landing pad for everything. And you can at least get a hold of me if you have any questions, concerns, feedback. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate all of you so very much. Hope you found this helpful. I'll see you on the next video. Take care.